The story begins with a man standing atop a mountain of corpses. He asked Luo why it had come to this, recalling how they had once been like brothers, fighting side by side through life and death. Luo responded by reminding him of the beginning of the calamity, when monsters emerged from strange spatial rifts, spreading chaos across the world. These rifts came to be known as dungeons, and those who encountered them gained mysterious powers called classes. To combat the threat, the class core was established, leading a triumphant campaign to conquer the dungeons. Luo stared intently at the protagonist and explained that this was exactly why he needed to be eliminated. The man had become too powerful to control. Strong class users could easily disrupt the Empire's order, and having surpassed even Triple S rank, the protagonist was considered the greatest threat. Supreme power, Luo claimed, had to stay with the royal family to preserve the Empire's stability. With fury in his eyes, the protagonist demanded to know if that justified the slaughter of his family and comrades. Luo, eyes filled with cold malice, insisted that it was all done in the name of order. Before the protagonist could respond, Luo triggered an explosion. He had sabotaged the man's armor long ago. The blast also injected a complex poison into his wounds. Luo was certain that, after an SSS-ranked battle, the man wouldn't have the strength to fight back. As a final show of respect, Luo had even assembled an entire army to end him. As he approached death, the protagonist's memories with Luo came flooding back. In that moment, his hidden skill, Mirror World, met its activation conditions. Mirror World, an SSS-rank hidden ability, could reverse everything. His life ended, and his soul sank into a lake. Decades passed. Two boys were torturing another boy named Ryuk. They had tied him to a tree and repeatedly dunked him into the lake. One of them punched his stomach and urged the other to dunk him again. As they taunted him, they found his desperate expression amusing and planned to pull him out just to beat him again. Ryuk was running out of breath, wondering why he was always the one to suffer. At that moment, the protagonist's soul began to stir. A boy with glasses approached the scene and told the bullies to stop, warning that Ryuk might die. One of the bullies scoffed and said that if Ryuk was dying, he should heal himself. That's what a chanter was for, even if it wouldn't help much. He then accused the boy with glasses of being a hypocrite, saying it was his idea to find Ryuk in the first place. If Ryuk died, it would be on him. Panicking, the boy with glasses insisted he had been forced into it. Enraged, the bully raised his hand to strike him. Suddenly, a powerful light burst from the lake. The bullies screamed in terror, shouting that a dungeon had appeared and they needed to run, as it was beyond anything they could handle. But the boy with glasses was transfixed. Ryuk was still underwater. He rushed to the rope, desperate to save him. The lake dried up instantly, and monsters began to emerge. As the boy with glasses untied the knots, one of the monsters lunged at him. Ryuk, now conscious, grabbed his shirt and pulled him away just in time. Then he extended his hand and cast a skill, Glacial Impact. The system message informed him he had used basic heal on minor Demon A, but the action failed. The target's HP was already full. The boy with glasses panicked, not understanding why he was healing a monster. When the monster attacked again, Ryuk conjured a shield just in time to block the blow. Opening the system interface, the protagonist realized he now inhabited Ryuk's body and held the Chanter class. This wasn't his original body. Normally, when someone interacted with a dungeon, they were assigned a random class that couldn't be changed. They would grow stronger within the dungeon, gaining class-specific skills. The protagonist had once been a warrior who reached the peak. At the time of his death, he had activated Mirror World, which had trapped him in that hidden space until he heard Ryuk's dying scream. He understood now he had been revived in Ryuk's body. It wasn't exactly comforting, but he silently thanked the boy for giving him another chance. The boy with glasses warned that the monsters were closing in and pleaded for help, saying he could handle only 3 at most. The protagonist knew this body was too weak. Even low-level enemies were too much. He couldn't even run at their speed. Opening his skill window, he found nothing useful. Basic heal restored only 14 HP, and entangling vines had a low success rate for immobilizing a single enemy. The Chanter class was highly specialized for support and lacked flexibility. It was no wonder it was looked down on. Relying on his old instincts, Ryuk dodged a monster's attack, but he knew he needed a solution fast. If he ran out of stamina, he'd die. His only chance was Mirror World. He attempted to activate it, dodging another attack and touching the monster. But the skill failed, conditions unmet. He wasn't sure if his level was too low or if a mirror was needed. Trying again, the result was the same. He guessed the skill required a reflective surface to function. Since he couldn't raise his level right now, he decided to test other targets. A weapon? Failed. A loincloth? Also failed. The boy with glasses begged him to stop wasting time. He couldn't hold out much longer. Suddenly, a massive burst of energy crashed from the sky. A malformed overlord, level 10, appeared. The boy with glasses went pale. It was over. Even one elite monster like that needed at least level 10 to fight, and more were coming. He collapsed in fear as hundreds of creatures surrounded them. Still experimenting, the protagonist tried using Mirror World on Zhao's makeshift barrier, but it failed. Skills belonging to others couldn't be reversed. However, that gave him an idea. Maybe he could reverse his own. He quickly tested it on his entangling vines. This time, it worked. Mirror World reversed the skill into chaotic thorns, and when activated, thousands of thorns erupted from the ground. One monster leapt to attack Zhao, but another, surrounded by a red aura, intercepted it. Zhao was confused. The protagonist understood the skill had flipped completely. Instead of immobilizing, it now inflicted confusion. Whereas entangling vines only had a small chance to restrain one enemy, chaotic thorns now caused thorns to lash out with a chance of confusing the target. The confused monsters began attacking each other. Watching the chaos, the protagonist smiled. A useless skill had become deadly, and with that thought, he began to wonder what would happen if he reversed the rest of his skills. Mirror World hadn't just reversed the effects of skills, it had enhanced them across the board. If he had used the skill in its original form, the success rate would have been low, and the restraint duration would have barely lasted a second, nowhere near its current potency. Picking up a sword lodged in the ground, Ryuk couldn't help but wonder what revering his other remaining skills might lead to. His eyes fell on the skill Empowered Strike. It cost 20 mana, lasted 30 seconds, and granted a 5% attack boost to a single unit, but the effect ended the moment that unit used mana. When Ryuk reversed the skill, it transformed into Trick Blade. It now cost 40 mana, lasted for 60 seconds, and instead granted a 10% attack boost every time mana was consumed. Upon activating it, his sword pulsed with a sharp, threatening aura. He realized that every skill he used while Trick Blade was active would stack a 10% increase in his attack power. The potential of this ability was staggering. Just by having it active for a minute, he could theoretically skyrocket his damage output. He soon leveled up to level 6. Glancing around, he noticed many monsters had already fallen, victims of their own chaotic infighting. Each kill still awarded decent experience. When one of the remaining monsters tried to ambush him, Ryuk responded quickly and blocked the attack. Checking his stats, he now had 480 HP and 120 mana points, and as he'd expected, leveling up fully replenished his mana. With the battlefield still in disarray, Ryuk decided to experiment with Trick Blade. He cast Chaotic Thorns, burning mana, which in turn activated Trick Blade's passive, and with each activation his attack power climbed another 10%. His mana quickly dropped, and within seconds only 12 points remained. Yet his attack power had now increased by 120%, with 44 seconds of Trick Blade still left. His eyes lit up, locking onto a charging monster. The ability to scale his damage to over twice its original value so effortlessly was something no normal skill offered. The charging beast struck, but Ryuk countered, sliding past it and slashing a deep cut along its back, then gutting it from the front. Zhao stood frozen in shock, barely able to comprehend what he was witnessing. Since when could a level 5 chanter pull off something like this? Since when did chanters even have access to this kind of power? Ryuk continued cutting through monsters with ease. With level 6 stats, a full mana pool of 120, and a regeneration rate of 1 mana per second, he calculated that he could theoretically reach 2.3x his base attack power. In a flash, he eliminated a level 11 elite and smirked. That level was just barely within his handling range, but he could manage. Suddenly, a massive hand erupted from the earth. Ryuk's gaze sharpened as a hulking figure emerged. It was a level 21 boss monster, the Battle Fiend Chimera. It roared, annihilating smaller monsters in a single sweep. Zhao was visibly terrified. Ryuk, however, was only mildly surprised. He hadn't expected a hidden level 21 boss here, but it wasn't unwelcome. The Chimera began charging at him. Ryuk attempted to cast Chaotic Thorns again, but the skill failed. The monster was immune to Chaos-type effects. Just as the creature was about to strike, Zhao jumped in front and summoned a shield to intercept the blow. Ryuk raised an eyebrow at this unexpected move. Then someone else appeared, blonde-haired, familiar, scolding Ryuk for charging ahead like a fool. Ryuk's eyes widened in recognition. The boss's next blow shattered Zhao's shield and sent him crashing to the ground. Ryuk rushed over and extended his hand, casting Basic Heal. It restored 1 HP and consumed mana, dropping his MP to 54. But Trick Blade triggered again, boosting his attack by another 10%. He followed up with another Basic Heal, this one critting and healing for 5 HP. With just 1 mana left, Ryuk scowled. Chanter healing truly was pathetic. He asked Zhao if he had any potions. Zhao nodded, saying he had an emergency one. Ryuk told him to drink it immediately. Trick Blade now had 85 seconds left. Meanwhile, the boss continued slaughtering nearby monsters. Ryuk wasn't strong enough to face it head-on just yet, but he had a strategy in mind. Drawing his blade, he asked Zhao to give him a minute to handle the remaining mobs. Zhao looked confused but nodded. Ryuk then moved like a thunderbolt, slicing down every monster in his path. Trick Blade's timer eventually hit 0, but Ryuk had gained enough EXP to level up again. His HP and MP were restored to 80 and 120 respectively. He quickly reactivated Trick Blade and repeatedly cast Chaotic Thorns, watching his attack power spike by 10% with every cast. To beat the boss, he needed at least a 400% increase, meaning he'd have to cast it at least 40 times within 50 seconds. To do that, he needed to hit level 10. Zhao watched, stunned, as Ryuk shredded monster after monster, leveling up rapidly. The boss prepared to attack again, but just then Ryuk's body began to radiate with power. He was now level 12. Trick Blade's current boost had reached 510%, with 95 seconds still on the clock, more than enough. Ryuk surged forward like lightning, severing one of the boss's arms, then blinking behind it to unleash a vicious combo of slashes. The Chimera howled in pain. Before it could retaliate, Ryuk diced it into chunks. In seconds, he had taken down a level 21 dungeon boss with over 10,000 HP. The victory earned him 3 more levels. Now level 15, Ryuk stood tall while Zhao stared, utterly dazed. Had a level 5 chanter just solo cleared a hidden dungeon. With the dungeon lord defeated, the system signaled that the dungeon had been cleared. Zhao approached, still shaken, asking if it was really Ryuk. Monsters had dropped loot, and the system prompted Ryuk to collect it. Zhao couldn't understand how Ryuk had grown so powerful so quickly. Ryuk looked at him quietly, thoughts drifting to the past. Then, seeing Zhao's face more clearly, he suddenly asked what his relationship was with Zhao Benben. Zhao froze. How did Ryuk know his great-grandfather's nickname? Ryuk was somewhat surprised to learn that he was actually the great-grandson of Chio Benben. Memories of Chio Benben surfaced, and his eyes filled with sorrow as he recalled how all the people he once knew had been killed by Luo. Just as he was about to ask more about Chio Benben, Zhao looked away and said there was no need to discuss him at the moment. If Ryuk didn't want to answer his question, he didn't have to, but humiliating him like that wasn't necessary. Ryuk was left a little confused, not fully grasping what was going on. Zhao went on to say that, though he didn't understand why, Ryuk had been hiding his true strength all along. He advised that they return to school since the next day. The school had arranged a visit to the Modern History Memorial Hall, and skipping class might draw attention. Ryuk clenched his fists tightly, anger simmering within. Though he agreed to go back, he knew deep down that revealing his true identity wasn't an option yet. If Zhao started digging too deeply, it could raise suspicions. Ryuk thought about the Modern History Memorial Hall. It might hold records of what had happened after his supposed death. The next day, they boarded the subway to school. The students were buzzing with excitement. Times had changed drastically. After being gone for so many years, the world had mutated in unimaginable ways. He couldn't believe they now used dungeon-sourced energy to power carriages. So many things were completely foreign to him, though some resembled items he had seen in dungeons before. He opened his system inventory and wondered whether only items dropped by monsters could be taken out of dungeons. He equipped the Chimera Bone Ring, a level 14 ring crafted from the rib of the dungeon lord of flesh and bone, the battlefield Chimera. It granted the user the ability to attach a Chimera limb to their body. He also took out the robust physique skill book from his inventory. It was of excellent quality, a passive skill, and could be learned by any class. He noted that equipment like this and skill books could be removed from dungeons via the inventory, and could even be bought and sold in the outside world. The resilient physique skill was already active. It was a passive, permanent ability that reduced incoming physical damage. Anything that couldn't be stored in the inventory likely disappeared when the dungeon collapsed. His eyes reflected a hint of confusion. So much had happened after his death, and he had no idea what the world had become. Before long, they arrived at the Modern History Memorial Hall, and the first thing he saw was the statue of Luo, the supreme ruler of the kingdom, the emperor who had supposedly ended the dungeon disasters. The teacher began guiding the students through the exhibits, explaining that more than 50 years ago, this very place had been the site of a significant rebellion. Back then, society was overwhelmed by dungeon threats. The teacher mentioned that after the most terrifying Trippes-rank dungeon appeared, everyone lived in fear. It was then that King Luo personally led the professional army to conquer it. Though they suffered heavy casualties, they finally succeeded, only to be ambushed by a rebellion. The rebellion, the teacher said, was orchestrated by none other than Ryuk, the man once trusted deeply by the king, who ultimately turned into a traitor. Hearing this twisted version of history, Ryuk couldn't contain his anger. It was they who had cleared the Trippes-rank dungeon. They were the ones ambushed. Yet now, history had painted him the villain. The teacher clenched his fists and said no one could imagine the pain of betrayal under such conditions. But their great king had overcome it, and with the help of the hero, Ding, suppressed the rebellion. At the mention of the name Ding, Ryuk's eyes narrowed in curiosity. He wondered if such a person really existed. Suddenly, the bullies who had previously tormented Ryuk by the lake reappeared. They looked confused, unable to believe that Ryuk and Zhao were still alive after being dragged into that newly formed dungeon. One of them mentioned the dungeon had been cleared and guessed that a powerful master must have been nearby. They figured they'd been lucky to survive. Ryuk's attention locked onto them. So these were the bastards who had tortured the former owner of his body. Meanwhile, the students began questioning Ding Shu about what had happened. When he casually confirmed that they'd encountered a new dungeon and survived its disaster, the others were shocked. Ding Shu threw his arm over Zhao's shoulder and quietly told him they had nearly dragged both of them into that dungeon. He demanded to know how Zhao planned to repay that debt. Zhao, clearly panicking, insisted it was Ding Shu's fault and threatened to report him for nearly getting him and Ryuk killed. Ding Shu grabbed Zhao by the head, clearly seeing that Zhao had no idea what was really happening. He forced Zhao to look at the statue before them, pointing out how his ancestor was being crushed beneath the hero's feet. Then he revealed the truth. Zhao was a descendant of Zen, the infamous traitor. He asked whether Zhao truly believed anyone would ever take his side. Now Ding Shu started making everything up. As he began shouting, saying that Zhao could insult him all he wanted, but he wouldn't stand for any insult to his ancestor. Zhao stood there in stunned silence. A crowd gathered, whispering among themselves. Ding Shu's grandfather was the hero Ding? They all turned their attention to Zhao, realizing that he was a descendant of Zen. In their eyes, a traitor's descendant insulting a hero was absurd. They remembered how Zen had slaughtered countless people. Without the intervention of the hero, more lives would have been lost. Ding Shu sneered and said he didn't care what Zhao said about him behind his back, but insulting his ancestor to his face was unforgivable. The teacher came over, placed a hand on Zhao's shoulder, and gently asked him to apologize. He said that, as his teacher, he had always treated him fairly and reminded him that the hero had once shown mercy to his family. Even if Zhao didn't feel gratitude, he had no right to defame him. With that, the teacher left. Ding Shu placed a hand on Zhao's head and mocked him, saying that if he beat him up right there, the crowd would only cheer. No one would help a despised mutt like him. He grabbed Zhao by the hair and asked whether he really thought that he, the descendant of a hero, could be wrong. He raised his fist, ready to strike, but before he could, a kick landed squarely on his face, knocking him to the ground. Zhao's eyes widened in disbelief. Standing before him, eyes blazing with fury, was Ryuk. He asked coldly if the hero's family had forgotten how to discipline their brats. The students began recording, wondering if it was really Ryuk. They whispered among themselves that he seemed like a completely different person and couldn't believe he had dared to strike Ding Shu. To them, he had gone insane. Some recalled that Ryuk was just a level 5, the weakest in their class, and couldn't understand what had made him act so recklessly. With no parents and a gloomy demeanor that kept everyone at a distance, many assumed he had finally snapped. Ding Shu wiped his cheek and scoffed, claiming Ryuk was nothing more than a punching bag who should be grateful he wasn't retaliating. He couldn't believe Ryuk had dared to hit him while his guard was down. Enraged, he and his friends rushed forward, but Ryuk moved like lightning, slipping past their attacks and striking them before they could react. Ding Shu collapsed to his knees, coughing up blood, while the crowd murmured in disbelief. No one could comprehend what just happened. Even Ding Shu, still stunned, couldn't believe Ryuk's sudden speed. Questions began circulating among the students. Was Ding Shu weaker than they thought? Furious, Ding Shu activated the skill Rage, boosting his attack power by 25%, and equipped the fire-forged hammer, adding 314 points to his attack. He assumed Ryuk's earlier blow had been luck and lunged at him without hesitation. But Ryuk was faster. Taking advantage of an opening, he struck Ding Shu's jaw while using the skill Blade of Trickery, which boosted his own attack power by 80%. Stunned, Ding Shu barely processed the blow before Ryuk followed up with a heavy kick that sent him crashing to the ground. As a guard entered the scene and saw Ryuk standing over Ding Shu, he asked if there was a healer nearby. The students stared in shock, unable to reconcile the Ryuk they knew with what they were seeing now. Even the blonde girl and her friend watched in disbelief. The guard reminded everyone that fighting was forbidden inside the hall due to the risk of property damage, then turned to the teacher, questioning why he wasn't able to control his students. The teacher began walking toward Ryuk, clearly furious. Not only had Ryuk insulted a hero, but now he had assaulted that hero's descendant. Calling him shameless, the teacher drew his sword as Ryuk's attention shifted toward him. Without hesitation, Ryuk activated the ring. As the teacher struck, his sword shattered into pieces, leaving everyone frozen in shock. Ryuk calmly suggested they put aside the argument about shamelessness for the moment. He accused the teacher of only listening to Ding Shu's side of the story, and asked whether he was trying to curry favor with his family. The teacher told Ryuk to stop spouting nonsense, but his gaze drifted to Ryuk's ring. Although he hadn't used his full strength, it had still blocked his attack, and he began wondering what sort of equipment Ryuk was wearing. A powerful aura radiated from him, but Ryuk casually clarified that he didn't really think the teacher was that kind of person. It had just been a passing thought. The students were still in shock, unable to believe that Ryuk had blocked the teacher's blow. The teacher promised to thoroughly investigate the situation, though inwardly he was troubled by the thought of Ryuk possessing such high-grade equipment. Could he have some sort of backing? Ryuk's ring was the Chimera Bone Ring. Though of epic quality, it was already 37% damaged and had originally been obtained from a level 21 lord. Using it to defend against a level 35 teacher was pushing its limits. Ryuk then requested to be expelled from the hall along with Zhao. Zhao hesitated for a moment, then stood and followed Ryuk, eyes filled with confusion. The students still couldn't believe Ryuk had managed to block the teacher's attack. They questioned whether any student should be able to do such a thing. The teacher instructed his students to heal Ding Shu as Ryuk and Zhao exited the hall. Ryuk felt a heavy sorrow weigh on him. He couldn't believe that in the end no one had survived, and Benben had been killed long ago by the so-called hero. His eyes drifted to Zhao. He figured that if he asked him anything now, Zhao would probably answer without thinking. Ryuk coughed and admitted his historical knowledge was lacking, asking Zhao to recount the specific achievements of the hero Ding Kun. Zhao grew nervous but said he would try to remember. He explained that, according to legend, Ding Kun had uncovered the great villain Ryuk's conspiracy early on and prepared an ambush near the S-rank dungeon to stop him. This had supposedly resolved the entire rebellion crisis. Ryuk was surprised, his mind drifting to the memories of his past life and how they had truly been ambushed. Zhao continued, explaining that Ding Kun had trained from a young age, driven by the dream of ending the dungeon crisis. After being promoted by the king, he fought across the nation, saving countless cities from disaster, most notably during the infamous Great Cataclysm of Winterfell City. Ryuk's eyes dropped to the ground as the image of his former self standing atop a mountain of corpses resurfaced in his memory. With a somber expression, he asked Zhao about the sword held by the hero's statue. Zhao said it was the flowing cloud sword, the very blade used to execute the traitor Ryuk, according to the story. It was a top-tier weapon. Ryuk's expression darkened. They hadn't just stolen his achievements and reputation, they had even taken his sword. Quietly, he resolved that Ding Kun would be the first to fall. Outside the Ding family compound, several high-level warriors were patrolling. Suddenly, one of them stopped. His eyes began to glow, drawn to something nearby. He spotted Ryuk and Zhao slipping into an alley but decided not to pursue them, assuming they were simply passing through. Noticing the warrior's alertness, Ryuk suspected he might be a wanderer class with a scout-type skill. Zhao urged Ryuk to give up, pointing out the heavy guard presence. Even if they managed to sneak in, he said, the moment Ding Shu returned, they'd be finished. Though Ryuk wanted to confront the hero Ding Kun directly, he knew it wasn't possible. According to Zhao, Ding Kun spent all his time inside a high-level dungeon. Unlike in the past, dungeons could no longer be freely entered or exited. Military clearance and a special permit were required. Still, Zhao was certain that the Ding family must have such a pass at their residence. Ryuk questioned whether such a large number of guards was necessary for just one branch of the Ding family. Zhao explained that, as descendants of a hero, the Ding family held influence, and they even had a dungeon within their estate. Ryuk was stunned to learn they had a dungeon at home. Zhao further explained that low-level dungeons had long been sold off privately, but only powerful and influential people could afford them. That's why Ding Shu always had guards and could farm monsters to level up anytime he wanted. In contrast, regular students could only gain experience during school dungeon trials, where they even had to compete over monster spawns. Ryuk realized how much the era had changed. Was power now tied directly to wealth and privilege? Zhao confirmed this, explaining that ordinary people usually graduated between level 15 and 20. After that, without dungeon access, they stayed stuck at that level. Only those working dungeon-related jobs, like miners or national rangers, might reach level 30 by middle age. Guards in the Ding family compound had access to their private dungeon and could maintain levels around 30. To rise above that, one had to join the army or qualify for an official organization through school assessments. Only then could they enter higher-level dungeons and push beyond. Ryuk understood, if he wanted to grow stronger, that permit was crucial. Zhao still urged him to leave. The level gap was too great, and no matter how skilled Ryuk was, the guards would overwhelm him. Ryuk knew he wasn't yet strong enough to kill Ding Kun, much less Supreme King Luo Wei, who was shielded by layers of protection. Still, Ryuk assessed that the typical level 30 scouting skills like Eagle Eye, Enhanced Hearing, or Craft Spirit Summon covered only small areas. These skills couldn't monitor an entire compound 24/7. Besides, this wasn't a life-and-death dungeon. Most guards were complacent. That was enough for Ryuk. Zhao began to panic, but Ryuk leapt onto the compound wall. Compared to the flawless scouting in high-level dungeons of his past life, this place was far more relaxed. Zhao warned that if they were caught inside a private dungeon like this, they could be killed without consequence. Ryuk grabbed Zhao by the collar and asked if he truly wanted to change his life. Zhao admitted he did, but had planned to wait until he joined a guild. Ryuk challenged him, did he really believe a guild could change everything? Zhao, the great-grandson of the traitor Xian. Zhao's eyes filled with sadness. Ryuk pulled him up onto the wall, telling him that destiny could only be changed in the present, not by gambling on a future he wasn't even sure would come. There was a dungeon right in front of them, and Ryuk wasn't going to ignore it. He left the choice to Zhao. Zhao hesitated, sweating. Ryuk wondered if the descendant would choose the same path as his ancestor, but Zhao stood up. He couldn't let Ryuk go in alone. Ryuk warned him to stay quiet. There were no signs of summoning-type scout skills here, meaning if they stayed out of sight and timed it right, they could slip in unnoticed. Following Ryuk's plan, the two of them successfully entered the Ding family compound. Zhao's eyes were drawn to the dungeon that sprawled beneath the estate. Inside, they encountered two monsters, one level 6, the other level 8. Ryuk noted that although the monster level was slightly higher than the previous dungeon, their numbers were fewer, likely because the Ding family regularly cleared them. Ryuk pointed out the two small mobs and encouraged Zhao to try. Zhao hesitated, scared. He insisted there was no way he could beat them, but Ryuk pushed him into it. As the monsters attacked, Zhao raised his shield in defense, still shocked that Ryuk actually trusted him. Nervous and full of regret, Zhao wished he had stayed home. Ryuk encouraged him to fight back. Zhao, panicked, asked how he was supposed to find an opening. Ryuk reassured him he was watching and wouldn't let anything bad happen. Taking a leap of faith, Zhao fought back with his shield. Just then, another monster attacked from behind, but he instinctively dodged. It was just as Ryuk had thought. Zhao's natural talent was strong. Though timid, he had excellent spatial awareness and positioning. That's why he often looked like he was in danger but lost little health. Zhao struck the monster, but his shield broke apart. Instantly, Ryuk stepped in and finished the monsters off. Zhao was surprised to see he had leveled up. He was now level 7. Ryuk explained that experience was shared based on contribution. If Zhao hadn't destabilized the monsters, he wouldn't have gotten much XP since Ryuk delivered the final blows. Ryuk was wielding the resentful bone blade, a weapon formed from resentment crystallized in a leg bone. It granted plus 62 attack power and plus 11 spiritual attack. Ryuk noticed Zhao's agility and asked how he distributed his attribute points. Zhao admitted he split them evenly, except for spirit. Normally, shield bearers didn't invest in agility, but Zhao explained that if he didn't, no one would team up with him at school. A slow tank meant missing out on all the monster kills. Ryuk sighed. He explained that long-term planning was critical. After level 60, class advancements required specific attributes. For example, the Bastion Fortress class needed 60 stamina and 90 defense. Zhao couldn't just add points at random. Zhao replied that most people never even reached level 40 in their lifetime. How was he supposed to think about level 60, let alone S rank? Ryuk smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. From that moment forward, he told him, he should start aiming not just for S rank, but far beyond it. He also needed to start thinking about his own class advancement. Ryuk reflected that his own support class had only stayed relevant because of the hidden skill mirror world. Unless something unexpected happened, he would eventually switch to another class. And then it hit him, something stunning. His mirror world skill could actually be leveled up. Inside the Ding family's private dungeon, Ryuk moved swiftly as he fought off monsters. His trick blade skill boosted his attacks significantly, but it faded just as he clashed with a level 17 zombie greed demon. Though the creature still stood, the impact of trick blade's power was clear, so were its limitations during drawn-out battles. Ryuk's mana and stamina were low. He finally defeated the demon, but the strain confirmed his body wasn't yet built for extended combat. The victory brought big rewards. Ryuk gained 2 levels, reaching level 17, and saw a sharp increase in health, mana, and attribute points. More importantly, he obtained 2 shadow creature souls from elite zombies, adding 2,000 experience points to his SSS rank mirror world skill, enough to confirm it could level up. After collecting loot, Ryuk was satisfied with the gains. But sensing danger, he quickly climbed to a higher point and noticed Ding family guards patrolling more frequently. Below, Zhao, now level 8 and better equipped, nervously suggested they retreat. He pointed out the reduced monster presence and heightened security, suspecting they may have been discovered. Ryuk agreed. With guard activity rising, any further fighting would require constant awareness and strategic use of Trick Blade. It wasn't worth the risk. He turned his attention to a new skill book, Brick Spell, which created mana bricks. Reversed through Mirror World, it became Void Technique, turning small objects intangible. This made him realize that not all reversed skills were built for combat. Some offered more subtle, utility-based uses. Ryuk checked Mirror World again. It needed just 30% more experience to level up. Standing on a cliffside, he reflected on the incredible potential of its reversed abilities. Even at its current level, the strength it granted pushed him to continue. His eyes glowed with focus as he formed a new plan. The dungeon's monsters granted unique mirror world experience, and defeating the boss might be enough to push the skill to level 2. Despite the risks, the reward was too tempting. They moved silently through the cavern, hiding behind rocks as the guards used detection skills with increasing frequency. The danger grew as they neared their objective, a towering shadowed figure sitting on a throne, bound by thick, glowing purple chains at the top of the stairs. Guards surrounded it heavily. This was the dungeon boss. Zhao, hiding nearby, was stunned to see a boss controlled like this. Ryuk was less surprised. Their academy's boss was similarly protected. It seemed powerful groups used these methods often. Ryuk scanned the area. While some guards on the stairs seemed relaxed, the glowing chains restraining the boss looked far from ordinary. He assessed the situation. A direct approach was impossible. Charging the boss would attract every guard and lead to a certain loss. But Ryuk spotted a window of opportunity, a lone guard wandering nearby. He decided to act. Covering his face, he activated Trick Blade, giving him a 150% attack boost, and struck. The ambush worked. The guard collapsed, badly injured, as Zhao watched from a distance. Ryuk stood over him, his presence cold, and demanded answers. The terrified man begged for his life, saying he wasn't paid enough by the Ding family to die for them. Ryuk listened carefully. This was a chance to gather crucial intel. He asked about the hero Dungeon Pass, startling the guard, who revealed that the old master kept many in his study. Apparently they weren't rare. Mistaking Ryuk for some hero-obsessed fanatic, the guard quickly assured him he was telling the truth and added that the passes were only temporary samples. Without help from inside, they wouldn't work. Ryuk wasn't fazed. Grabbing the man's collar, he told him not to worry and ordered him to empty his inventory, showing clear intent to steal his belongings and possibly take his identity. Back at the compound, Ryuk continued interrogating the frightened man, still holding him by the shirt. All the guard had was a single, mediocre skill book, which disappointed Ryuk. The man explained that real dungeon loot was stored in the inner residence. Outer guards like him only got leftovers. Ryuk took the skill, Sunlight Baptism, a passive that granted temporary defense after healing. Reversed through Mirror World, it became Moonlight Blessing, an offensive buff that increased attack power after healing. He noted that, like the dungeon passes, this skill was only accessible from within the inner residence. The guard pointed to the luxurious building and explained that outer guards weren't allowed inside without summons. Security was tight. Only Ding Shu and others over level 50, fully geared, operated within. Ryuk leaned in, asking if the dungeon pass was indeed there. The guard confirmed it, also mentioning that the family head, level 42, resided there, someone Ryuk couldn't beat. He listed the household's strength. The current and second heads were both level 42, the third head was level 52, and the old master was level 57. If the top two returned, escape would be impossible. With all the information gathered, Ryuk knocked the guard out. He had Zhao dress in the man's armor to use it as a disguise and wait for his signal. Since the powerful family head was safe in the residence, Ryuk chose to lure him out instead of facing him directly. Back in the dungeon, Ryuk observed the boss again. The Ding family had engineered the setup well, using enchanted chains to create a permanent farming zone. But Ryuk noticed a flaw. The system relied on the assumption that no one could or would unlock the restraints. They didn't know him. In his past life, Ryuk had learned how to break such chains. Quietly approaching another guard, he picked the lock with ease. The restraints fell and the enraged boss burst free, rampaging through the dungeon. Chaos erupted. Guards scrambled as the massive creature went berserk. This was exactly what Ryuk wanted. The alarm sounded, and the level 42 family head rushed out of the now unprotected inner residence, shouting for reinforcements. As the elite troops focused on the crisis, Ryuk snatched the high-level level 60 combat chains that had once restrained the boss. Holding the pools in gear, he knew his plan had succeeded. With the family's attention elsewhere, he and Zhao could finally enter the inner residence unopposed. As Ryuk's plan opened the way, new visitors arrived at the main entrance of the Ding family home. Servants rushed to greet the returning second master, Ding Hao, level 42, and his son, Ding Shu, who pulled up in a luxury car. Ding Hao casually dismissed Ding Shu's recent defeat by Ryuk as a small mistake, but Ding Shu made it clear he wasn't there to greet his father. Then Ding Hao opened the car door for a Miss Yun. Two young women stepped out, one with long blonde hair and another with dark hair, presumably Yun. At the top of the stairs, the mustached family head, just back from the dungeon commotion, waited with a smile. But his expression quickly turned to confusion, then anger. He kicked a passing servant out of his way and stormed down toward Ding Hao, Ding Shu, and the women, clearly upset. From the woods nearby, Zhao, dressed in guard armor, watched the scene. Ryak suddenly appeared behind him, startling him. Zhao expressed concern, saying now wasn't a good time to sneak into the residence. With the family returning, it was too risky. Ryak calmly asked why he looked so nervous. Zhao was surprised Ryak had returned so fast. Ryak explained that the monster he had released was a dungeon lord. Even capturing one at level 31 was nearly impossible, so the Ding family would be busy dealing with it for a while. This, he said, was the perfect opportunity. Zhao glanced back at the mansion sadly. The servant who had been kicked was his youngest uncle, Zhao, a level 17 man. Ryak listened as Zhao shared a dark part of their shared past. He explained that after the old Ryak had rebelled, his own family had already been branded traitors. Zhao said in a way that spared them from the shame and pain that followed. Branded as traitors, the Ko family had suffered under the Empire, homes destroyed, lives ruined. It got worse under secret orders from the so-called hero Ding Kun, who ensured the survivors were harassed and abused. Eventually, the broken Ko family had no choice but to work for the Ding family, the ones who ruined them. They lived in poverty, forced to obey, and were sometimes used as public examples of the Ding family's mercy. Zhao explained that his father's generation tried to resist, but their efforts ended in tragedy. His father lost his mind from the pressure, and his uncle Zoli became completely submissive, more like a dog than a man. Zhao's voice was heavy as he began doubting his own decisions, questioning if following Ryak into this danger was the right choice. Ryak turned to him and said he had to go to the inner residence. Zhao panicked, reminding him that Ding Shu's father, a fully geared level 42 fighter, was inside. If Ryak got caught, he'd be killed, but Ryak wasn't shaken. He explained that in a world where power was hoarded by the elite, you couldn't change your fate without taking risks. He told Zhao that nothing would ever change by waiting. Then Ryak gave him a clear choice: help change his own destiny or do nothing. Zhao was still frightened. He argued that the Ding family was too powerful, asking how two people could possibly go against such a force. Ryak turned away and looked toward the inner residence. As he began walking, he told Zhao that his fight wasn't just against one family, it was against the entire empire. Inside, Ding Hao relaxed on a couch, served by maids. He wondered aloud how the dungeon lord had broken free of its enchanted chains. The blonde girl politely asked if it was a bad time, offering to leave because of the emergency. Ding Hao smiled and waved it off, saying his older brother could handle it. He added that when their powerful father and third brother heard she was visiting, they immediately headed home to greet her. He also revealed they had contacted Hero Grandpa, who was excited to meet her. From a hidden balcony, Ryak listened intently. His focus sharpened at the mention of Hero Grandpa. He knew it referred to Ding Kun. He connected this with what the captured guard had said about needing both a pass and an escort to enter the hero dungeon. Noticing the way Yun was treated, he realized she must hold a very high status. Then another detail struck him: her name. She shared his last name. Was that a coincidence? He pushed the thought aside. For now he had a goal: get the dungeon pass. Yun stood silently, unreadable and important. With the main guards distracted, Ryak slipped into the inner residence. Moving silently through the lavish halls, he dodged maids and stayed hidden in shadows. He crept deeper into the mansion. Meanwhile, at the dungeon entrance, the chaos had ended. Ding Yi, level 42, and his team stood over the defeated dungeon lord. He realized it had been released intentionally, but was frustrated they couldn't find the culprit. He doubted anyone would take such a risk just for loot like the chains. Concerned, he ordered his forces to secure the inner residence. He didn't want anything to happen to their important guest. In the study, Ryak started searching. The desk drawers were empty at first, but he used his reversed brick spell, phasing, to pass his hand through the wood. Hidden inside was a secret compartment. He pulled out books and journals. Among them was a high-tier skill book for a wide area support move, Slowing Aura. He had found the family's secret stash. Outside, the mansion entrance filled with guards. Zhao, hiding nearby, panicked. Had Ryak been found? His fear grew with each new arrival. As guards passed near his hiding spot, Zhao froze. He wanted to run, but Ryuk's words echoed in his mind. Change starts with a choice. Making up his mind, Zhao stepped out and shouted to distract the guards. Then he ran, leading them away from the house. Ryuk saw Zhao's brave act through a window. Smiling proudly, he knew his friend had conquered his fear. To help Zhao escape, Ryuk created an even bigger distraction. He leaped into the courtyard, taunting the guards, announcing that he had stolen their chains and skill books. Furious, they chased him. As he ran, Ryuk used the slowing aura skill, but Mirror World reversed it into accelerating aura, boosting his and Zhao's speed. Ding-E noticed they weren't fleeing from the mansion. They were heading back toward the dungeon. Realizing the danger, he ordered 2 squads to return and protect the dungeon lord. Running beside Ryuk, Zhao was confused. Why go back into danger? Ryuk explained that with the boss weakened after the earlier fight, now was the perfect time to strike. Mirror World was close to leveling up, and killing the weakened dungeon lord would give him the final push he needed to evolve his most powerful ability. A tense quiet settled in the Ding family's lavish sitting room. The blonde girl sipping tea politely told Ding Hao, her host, that he could attend to the outdoor commotion. Smiling confidently, Ding Hao, the second patriarch, dismissed it as a minor issue, assuring his guest that his brother, Ding-E, would handle it easily. But it was far from easy. In the dungeon, Grand Patriarch Ding-E furiously tried to regain control. He yelled at a guard for being slow and ordered him to go directly after the rampaging intruder. As Ryuk zipped past, Ding-E commanded his fastest units, rogues and archers, to abandon the boss and pursue the intruder at all costs. Their efforts failed. Ryuk moved with incredible speed, leaving them far behind. He knew his advantage. He had allocated half his attribute points into agility. Combined with his reversed acceleration skills, he was so fast that only specialized level 30 rogues or archers had any hope of keeping up. He easily reached the main chamber where the skeletal overlord was surrounded. The beast was heavily wounded and crippled. With guards struggling to cast a sealing spell, Ryuk saw that his plan had worked perfectly. The boss was at its weakest. With a surge of purple energy, he prepared to deliver one decisive blow to finish the dungeon lord. As Ryuk approached, the guards around the overlord spotted him. They raised an alarm and scrambled to block his path. But before they could react properly, Ryuk unleashed chaotic thorns. Purple, thorny vines erupted from the ground, lashing out wildly. The guards were caught off guard, having never seen such a skill before. The thorns attempted to inflict a status ailment. Normally, humans resist such effects, but Ryuk's version of the skill was unnaturally potent. Several guards failed their resistance checks. The result was chaos. The afflicted guards fell into confusion. One mage accidentally blasted a fellow guard with a powerful spell, throwing their formation into disarray. The others watched in disbelief, stunned by the skill's unusually high success rate. With enemies attacking one another, Ryuk seized the opportunity. He slipped easily through the disorganized defense. His path was now clear to the weakened overlord. The guards' defense collapsed as Ryuk moved forward. In panic, they shouted questions. Why weren't their shields or crowd control working? Why were they hitting their own allies? Ryuk noted their lack of coordination, recognizing them as a militia-like group with no real experience in team combat. He figured peace had made them complacent, leading to their downfall. A guard captain tried to rally his men, shouting that if they could just pin the intruder down, he'd be done for. At that moment, the first patriarch, Ding-E, arrived. He ordered his troops to hold Ryuk and declared that he would deal with the intruder himself. The level 42 warrior in fiery gear leapt forward, his weapon blazing as he prepared a devastating attack. Ryuk watched calmly as the patriarch approached. With a scoff, he decided to take the hit head-on. He pulled out the level 60 combat chains he had stolen earlier. While he wasn't high enough level to equip them properly, their durability alone made them useful. As Ding-E's fiery strike came crashing down, Ryuk used the chains as a makeshift shield, successfully absorbing the blow's full force. But Ryuk wasn't just blocking. He cleverly used the momentum of Ding-E's powerful attack to launch himself backward, cannonball style, straight through the magical seal the guards had cast around the boss. He landed perfectly in front of the crippled dungeon lord. With a smirk, He thanked the enraged patriarch for the ride. Before the guards could react, Ryuk announced he'd be taking the Overlord's experience for himself. He struck with a powerful finishing blow, ending the boss's life. The reward was instant and massive. Ryuk gained 3 levels in one shot, jumping to level 20 and earning 9 attribute points. More importantly, the Dungeon Lord's massive experience pool maxed out his hidden skill, Mirror World. A system notification confirmed the skill had finally reached level 2. Enraged, Patriarch Ding-E screamed and charged at Ryuk with his fiery axe. The remaining guards followed, determined to catch the audacious intruder who now stood calmly before the Dungeon Lord's corpse. But Ryuk Cho wasn't intimidated. His focus was entirely on his prize, the newly evolved power of Mirror World. As Ding-E's flaming attack struck, it passed harmlessly through a flickering afterimage of Ryuk, who vanished the next instant. The guards froze, confused. He was gone. Ryuk had entered a completely different space. The world around him had shifted into a silent, crystal blue version of the dungeon. He had activated the upgraded ability of his hidden skill, Mirror World. Inside this strange dimension, ghostly translucent images of Ding-E and the guards remained frozen in place, unaware of his presence. A timer showed nearly 30 minutes remaining. Ryuk grinned. He realized that he could now enter the mirror dimension itself. Inside the strange blue-green world, Ryuk began testing his newly awakened power. Everything around him was a perfect mirror image of reality, flipped from left to right. At first, he assumed the ghostly figures of the guards wandering the area were just illusions, as his hand passed clean through one without resistance. But when he touched the crystal-like surface beneath his feet, he was surprised to feel its solid texture. That moment confirmed it. This place was more than just a trick of the mind. It was real. While exploring the area, he came across a glowing shard embedded in the ground. Curious, he picked it up, and immediately a system message appeared, identifying it as a mirror shard. Even more surprising was the note that this shard could be brought back into the real world. Ryuk froze for a moment, absorbing what that meant. With his Mirror World skill now at level 2, he wasn't just limited to observing or phasing into this space, he could take things out of it. Eager to understand what else had changed, he opened his system panel. A new list of skills greeted him, each one unfamiliar, powerful, and labeled with strange names like Reversed Invisibility and Force Field Cage. Most were grayed out, marked inactive. Confused, he read further and saw a small system note explaining the condition. These mirrored powers were based on skills he hadn't yet learned in the real world. To activate them, he would first need to acquire their normal versions. The mirror version was essentially a counterpart, his reversal of an existing skill. Suddenly it all clicked. The reversal ability he'd used before was only the entry point. This was the real strength of his class. The list was like a roadmap, showing him what reversed forms would become available as he progressed. For the first time, he could plan ahead with precision, choosing skills not just for what they were, but for the power they would unlock in the mirrored version. His thoughts were interrupted by a strange sensation behind him. Turning, he spotted a faint human-shaped blur, bluish-green and drifting aimlessly through the air like smoke suspended in crystal. He narrowed his eyes, wondering if it was a soul like the one he had been before his return to life. The idea fascinated him. If he had been trapped here once, maybe others had as well. But before he could ponder further, the form suddenly sparked with a flash of green energy and twisted violently into a grotesque undead creature. With a piercing scream, it lunged toward him. Reflexively, Ryuk drew his glowing blade, parrying the attack and countering with a precise slash. The monster shattered in a single blow, its strength unimpressive. He took a breath, watching the particles fade when another system message flashed into view. It offered him an undead contract. The details were clear. After defeating an undead creature in the mirror world, he could make a deal with its soul, allowing it to exit with him and serve as a fighter in the real world. The summoned soul's level would always match his own, and he could form up to 20 such contracts. That changed everything. Ryuk now realized his power extended far beyond items and reversal skills. He could bring back soldiers, an undead army, limited only by the quality and number of souls he could find. He looked at the mirror shard in his hand again, understanding that it represented just a fraction of what this place could give him. The level 2 upgrade wasn't just an improvement, it was a complete shift in how he could fight. The mirrored world around him stretched out in every direction like an endless crystal ocean, full of potential. Meanwhile, back in the real world, chaos had erupted. The private dungeon had vanished along with its lord, leaving behind a confused and stunned force of guards. None of them could make sense of what had happened. One of the captains, face flushed with stress, shouted demands, asking how the intruder had just disappeared. Another suggested it might be some advanced rogue stealth technique. But the resident rogue specialist shook his head, clearly frustrated, and explained that even their best stealth abilities had limits. This wasn't stealth, it was something else entirely. The tension boiled over. Another captain grabbed the rogue by the collar, furious, demanding an explanation. The first patriarch, Ding Yi, was beyond angry. Losing his private dungeon was a blow, and he needed someone to blame. With eyes blazing, he seized one of his own men by the face and growled that if they couldn't find the intruder, they would personally compensate for the loss. At that moment, Ryuk's mirror walk reached its end. The timer ticked down and he braced himself, wondering if he would return to his entry point or somewhere else entirely. He didn't have to wait long to find out. In a flash, he reappeared in the exact same location he had vanished from, and the first person to spot him was none other than Ding Yi. The patriarch's rage exploded as he roared for his forces to attack. Ryuk, unbothered, lifted his hand calmly. A swirl of green light gathered in his palm, radiating an eerie glow. He looked at them coldly, telling them they'd ganged up on him long enough. Now it was his turn. The ground cracked as his summoned army surged forth. Dozens of skeletal warriors poured out from the air behind him, their ghostly forms forming a terrifying line that charged directly at the panicked guards. Screams broke out as confusion spread. Some slashed wildly, others backed away in horror. Many questioned aloud whether these were ghosts or something even worse. Ding Yi, trying to regain control, shouted that the monsters were just undead, things he'd seen 100 times before. But even he knew this wasn't normal. One guard locked swords with a skeleton, expecting a weak puppet, but then a health bar appeared above its head, identifying it as a level 20 undead skeleton warrior. That made it clear. These weren't illusions or throwaway summons. They were bound, scaled fighters equal to Ryuk himself. Ding Yi's face contorted as he realized his men were still hesitating. To spur them into action, he shouted that anyone who helped capture the intruder would be rewarded. Greed briefly overpowered fear, and the guards began to rally. But before they could reach Ryuk, they noticed he was gone again. The summoned undead had been a diversion. Watching from a hidden spot, Ryuk assessed the fight with a calm gaze. He had already realized his undead weren't yet strong enough to overwhelm opponents on their own. The ones he had were simply the best available from the small zone he'd explored, limited to within 200 meters of his mirror entry point. That limitation would need to be addressed if he wanted stronger allies. He would have to enter from new locations in the future, hunting down better souls. His strategy session was interrupted by a sharp cry. His friend Zhao had been discovered hiding in the nearby woods. One of the guards, grinning cruelly, stepped forward, mocking the disguised boy and boasting about the reward he'd get for turning him in. Ryuk didn't hesitate. He moved like lightning from the shadows, cutting down the guards with clean, efficient strikes. Zhao barely had time to register what happened before Ryuk grabbed his arm and told him it was time to go. Glancing back at the battlefield, where his summoned undead continued to draw the enemy's focus, Ryuk knew it was time to retreat. Their objective was complete, and they had gained far more than they'd risked. With Zhao in tow and his new powers humming beneath the surface, Ryuk vanished once more, ready to regroup, reorganize, and prepare for the next stage of his plan. As Ryuk and Zhao made their escape, the remaining Ding family guards continued battling the undead army. The guards struck the skeletal warriors with fierce determination, shattering their bones. One of the leaders commented that the creatures weren't particularly strong, but their relief was short-lived. To their horror, every defeated skeleton reassembled instantly, completely unharmed. They fought on, but the skeletons kept reviving endlessly. Just when their morale began to break, Ding Ge, level 52 and the third head of the Ding family, appeared, calmly smoking a cigarette. Assessing the situation, he immediately understood the skeletons were summoned creatures, and their revival relied on the summoner's mana. With a confident smile, he concluded that they simply needed to keep killing them until their master's energy ran dry. Sometime after the chaos, the old master returned. A powerful figure with a long white beard, he was the head of the family and asked immediately whether their important guest, Miss Yun, had already left. Inside, his son Ding Hao bowed respectfully, apologizing for failing to keep her. He explained that an intruder had caused a commotion, shouting and breaking a window, which frightened the guest into leaving. The old master Ding Dan, level 57 and son of hero Ding Kun, flew into a rage. He yelled at his son over the complete security lapse, furious that someone had infiltrated and escaped without even being identified. Ding Hao lowered his head in shame, accepting full responsibility. However, he did offer a sliver of good news. Despite the incident, Miss Yun had agreed to visit the hero's dungeon. This meant that hero Ding Kun's legacy was still intact. But the patriarch remained unsatisfied. He declared that those responsible would be hunted down and eliminated without mercy. He then barked at his son to quickly inspect what else had been stolen. Far from the commotion, Ryuk reviewed the spoils from his raid. He examined the temporary dungeon access permit which bore Zhao's name. Though he'd secured the main objective, he still needed an escort to gain entry to the hero's dungeon. For now, he chose not to rush and assess the rest of his haul. The raid had been incredibly rewarding, boosting his level to 20. His Chimera bone ring, which had shielded him from an attack, was nearly destroyed, but he'd acquired over 10 valuable skill books. One of them contained chant skills, all of which were support types. He learned the battle song chant, which increased critical hit rate and damage, though it lowered defense. He immediately considered its inverse, shield song chant, which he guessed would do the opposite. Realizing the potential of revering support-type chants, he became excited. By mastering these skills, he could greatly enhance his stats. With this and a new passive skill that increased strength, he was confident that he could overpower anyone at the same level with brute stats alone. Among the other rewards, the Dungeon Lord had dropped a rare level 30 item, Corrupted Knight's Armor, which would be valuable in the future. But above all the gear and levels, the most important gain was leveling up his hidden skill, Mirror World, to level 2. Reflecting on his new abilities, Ryuk acknowledged that his necromantic summons had significantly boosted his combat strength. Still, he knew it wasn't enough. Thinking back to the statue of hero Ding Kun, he estimated the man had been at least an S-rank berserker. To stand a chance against such an opponent, Ryuk concluded he needed to reach level 50 or higher, and more importantly, find and contract an S-rank necromantic spirit. Later, now far from the Ding compound, Zhao still looked shaken. He nervously asked whether they might be followed. Ryuk assured him they had lost their pursuers and were safe since no one had seen their faces. Even so, Zhao remained uneasy, and Ryuk noted how traumatic the experience had likely been for him. Realizing his current undead army was still too weak, Ryuk turned to his next goal. He asked Zhao if there were any nearby dungeons where a powerful person had died. When Zhao seemed confused, Ryuk clarified that he needed a stronger dungeon to level up faster, and that the powerful dead would serve a separate purpose he'd explain later. After a moment, Zhao hesitantly confirmed that such a place existed, but it made him nervous. He revealed it was the school's private dungeon, and sneaking in would be impossible. This information made Ryuk pause. A secure, closely monitored dungeon wasn't ideal, but he wasn't deterred. If he couldn't enter the usual way, he'd just have to use special methods. As part of that plan, Ryuk approached his class teacher and handed over a rare, purple-quality skill book meant for wanderers, stolen from the Ding family. The bribe had its intended effect. Believing Ryuk had strong backing, the teacher became more accommodating. He admitted that dungeon access was generally fixed, but there was a loophole. The dungeon was available to graduating students, and while Ryuk didn't qualify, a teacher could recommend an exceptional one. Convinced of Ryuk's talent, the teacher agreed to endorse him. The plan worked. Ryuk joined the group of students heading to the school's Valiant Dungeon. Some students were full of determination. One grimly called it his last chance to level up, while another expressed gratitude to the hero. As Ryuk approached the glowing portal, he felt an odd sense of dread, as though something was off about the dungeon. The teacher, meanwhile, spoke enthusiastically about the location. saying it was where the hero once fought and that remnants of his power might still linger. Nearby, Zhao stood silently, his expression dark. He realized in horror that the Valiant Dungeon was the place where, according to the Empire's falsified history, hero Ding Kun had supposedly slain Zhao's great-grandfather, the so-called traitor Chion. Struggling internally, Zhao wondered if he should reveal the dungeon's true past to Ryak. At the dungeon entrance, the teacher gave a final warning. It was a high-level zone, and students needed to know their limits. He then pointed out a red-haired student in armor, Little Z, and instructed him to watch over Ryak and Zhao. Clearly annoyed, Little Z grumbled that he couldn't focus on leveling up if he had to babysit others. Another student pushed him forward, muttering complaints about why younger students were even allowed. Little Z entered with the group, then turned and told Ryak and Zhao to stay out of the way and not drag him down. If they did, he threatened to leave them behind. As they stepped into the vast, purple-lit interior of the dungeon, Ryak quietly assessed his surroundings. It was labeled a level 2040 zone, but instincts from his past life screamed something wasn't right. A deep, oppressive feeling washed over him, a sense of danger far beyond what a dungeon of this level should contain. As the students ventured deeper into the glowing, violet-hued Valiant Dungeon, Ryak spotted Yin and her blonde companion, Yun, inside. The girls found it odd that younger students like him were allowed in. Little Z, who had been assigned to monitor Ryak, also noticed the girls and pointed them out to another armored student. That student immediately started daydreaming about escorting the attractive pair, but his fantasy was cut short when a taller, more serious student in a helmet smacked him on the head, telling him to stop imagining things. The serious one revealed that both Yin and Yun were exceptionally strong, each above level 30, and scoffed that it was the girls who should be helping them. He said the daydreamer wasn't even close to their league. Embarrassed, the boy mumbled that he was only talking. As the older students chatted, the daydreamer couldn't help watching Yin and Yun. To his and his friend's surprise, the two high-level girls completely ignored them and walked straight toward Ryak and Zhao. Ryak watched them approach, puzzled. He recognized Yun as the high-status guest from the Ding family's residence. Her direct approach made him suspicious. He wondered if she recognized the original owner of his body or was confronting him on behalf of Ding Shu, whom he had publicly embarrassed. Yun greeted him with a confident smile, saying she had seen him at the memorial hall and complimented his fighting skills, even mentioning his unique voice. Ryak couldn't tell what she really wanted and assumed she was making small talk, but then Yun's golden eyes shimmered slightly as she leaned in closer, subtly hinting that she recognized his voice from the sound of shattering glass during the Ding family raid. Ryak was stunned. He realized she had identified him from just a couple of lines he had spoken. Having made her point, Yun's outfit shifted into a white, mage-like combat uniform. Yin did the same, her outfit changing into a dark green energy suit. Still reeling from the revelation, Ryak watched as Yun casually told him they'd go ahead and explore the dungeon first, before walking off with her friend. As they disappeared deeper into the dungeon, Ryak thought carefully about the interaction. It was clear she had recognized him as the intruder, but chose not to expose him in public. Her message had been subtle but clear. He wondered if it was a warning. He also considered the worrying possibility that Ding Shu might have recognized his voice during their earlier fight, but Ryak decided not to stress over it just yet. As long as the Ding family didn't act immediately, he believed his rapid leveling would soon make him strong enough to handle any threat they posed. Seeing Yun's seemingly friendly demeanor, Ryak decided to send a message of his own. He called out, warning them to be careful, saying the dungeon felt unnaturally dangerous. Yun paused and nodded, mentioning to her friend that she too sensed something strange. Given her level, the place shouldn't have felt this unsettling. With one last knowing smile at Ryak, she thanked him before she and Yin continued onward. Their brief and familiar exchange didn't go unnoticed. The older students around them were left stunned, whispering about why the usually cold and aloof Yun had spoken so casually with him. Driven by envy, some surrounded Ryak, pressing him for details about his relationship with her and demanding introductions. Ryak had no interest in their questions and firmly told them he and Zhao would explore the dungeon on their own. The older students were shocked at his audacity. They warned him that, as younger students, the level 20 monsters would surely kill them. But to their surprise, Little Z intervened, telling the group to let them go. He reasoned that anyone friendly with someone like Yin must be strong himself. When some of the others protested, reminding him of their teacher's orders, little Z's true motives became clear in his thoughts. He was determined to keep the loot for himself and didn't want to split the rewards. Letting Ryuk and Zhao wander off would reduce competition. He coldly finalized his decision by saying they had distress signal guns if they ran into trouble, so they could just be ignored. As Ryuk and Zhao walked away, little Z watched them with a mix of anger and jealousy. He couldn't understand how a plain-looking kid like Ryuk had caught Yun's attention. That confusion festered into a dark resentment. In his mind, he concluded that if Ryuk was so confident, then he deserved to die. Not long after Ryuk and the others had entered the dungeon, an enraged Ding Shu arrived at the entrance. A male staff member and a woman asked him why he was there. Burning with fury, Ding Shu grabbed the man by the collar, demanding to know if a team had just gone inside. The staff member pushed back, wanting to know what he was planning to do. Ding Shu had come straight from a frustrating meeting with his family elders. When he had tried to report that Ryuk and Zhao Ju were the intruders who raided their estate, his father Ding Hao dismissed the accusation, telling him not to use them as scapegoats for his public embarrassment. He said he had no time for petty grudges. Ding Shu insisted he recognized their voices during the raid, but Ding Ge remained skeptical. He pointed out that the intruders had been too skilled for ordinary students, escaping from trained guards with ease. Ding Yi said unless Ding Shu could prove those two were stronger than the estate guards, he had no grounds for suspicion. The family patriarch, Ding Dan, shut him down coldly, saying they had more important matters to attend to. Humiliated and ignored by his own family, Ding Shu had no choice but to act on his own. Back at the dungeon gate, he glared at the staff once more, declaring with wild determination that since Ryuk and Zhao were inside, he was going after them himself. Inside the dungeon, Ryuk was locked in battle with a tough level 20 greed demon crystal giant. The creature, formed entirely of sharp blue crystals, launched ferocious attacks. As Ryuk dodged its strikes, a new and even more dangerous enemy appeared, a level 30 greed demon crystal eye. It fired a powerful beam of purple energy straight at him. Recognizing the immense threat, Ryuk braced for the impact. From a distance, a panicked Zhao called out his name and quickly activated a support skill. A set of golden shields with angelic wings formed around Ryuk, absorbing the incoming blast. This skill, called Surrounding Shield, granted Ryuk a protective barrier with 500 durability and 700 defense for 3 minutes. But Zhao wasn't done yet. He followed it up with a motivational shout, wrapping Ryuk in an empowering aura that increased his attack power and movement speed by 5%. The display proved how rapidly Zhao was improving as a support player. With renewed strength, Ryuk launched a flurry of powerful blows at the giant crystal creature. His Trick Blade skill was active, providing a 70% attack boost. Seizing the moment, he delivered a final crushing hit that shattered the level 30 eye of the mountain. The victory paid off immediately. Ryuk reached level 21 and gained 3 attribute points. Zhao also cheered in excitement as he hit level 11, earning 3 points of his own. Ryuk told Zhao that the Surrounding Shield and motivational shout came from skill books they had stolen from the Ding family. He explained how useful those support abilities were, now that Zhao had successfully learned them. Looking at the remains of the defeated monsters, Ryuk reflected on how much their teamwork had improved. Though the dungeon monsters were slightly above their level, Zhao's support made it much easier to manage the fights. As they ventured deeper into the glowing crystal caves, Ryuk recalled something his teacher had once mentioned. There was said to be a rare monster hidden in this dungeon, one called the Obsidian Beast. Defeating it offered a chance to obtain a rare support skill book for gravitational pull. This was a key opportunity for Ryuk, who had already seen the reversed form of the force field zone listed in his Mirror World skill set and knew it would be crucial to his future strategy. But that wasn't his only goal. Surveying the vast and eerie terrain, Ryuk remembered that many powerful adventurers had died in this dungeon. He believed their souls still lingered, and he hoped to find and contract some of them as undead spirits for his army. Just then, a chill ran through him. Danger prickled in the air, and his eyes snapped open in alarm. Down in the canyon, a massive creature made of dark, glowing purple rock emerged, and it wasn't alone. A group of elite-level obsidian beasts was on the move, marching together through the Crystal Pillar Canyon. From atop a high cliff, Ryuk and Zhao watched the bizarre scene unfold. Ryuk observed that the beasts had traveled over a kilometer, much farther than their usual range. This strange, organized behavior made him mutter under his breath, Wanderer type. He recognized the pattern. These were not regular monsters. Wanderer types had no fixed spawn locations and roamed freely across dungeon maps. They were significantly stronger than normal creatures of the same level and often caught adventurers off guard. In the early days before humans had adapted to dungeon life, encountering a Wanderer type often ended in disaster. Worse, these creatures could leave the dungeon and attack towns, causing widespread destruction. Still, Ryuk knew that the risk came with great reward. Wanderer-type monsters dropped far better loot and gave more experience than regular monsters, making them prized targets for brave adventurers. Knowing this, Ryuk realized he had to be extremely careful. He couldn't afford to fight them head-on just yet. He needed to test their skills first and find a weak point. At first glance, he could tell they had high defense. The level 30 obsidian crystal beasts constantly healed, which made them extremely hard to wear down. Before he could form a strategy, the beasts launched their own coordinated assault. They fired a barrage of powerful energy beams called mana rays. Ryuk relied on his speed and the winged shields Zhao had summoned to dodge through the thick rain of attacks, but the sheer number overwhelmed him. One beam finally struck, drawing blood and sending pain shooting through his back. A glance at his health bar showed how badly the hit had hurt him. His HP had dropped significantly. He realized that, despite his agility, his current body's health and defense were too low. Without Zhao's shield, that single hit would have done serious damage. Acknowledging his limitations, Ryuk quickly changed tactics. He summoned his undead army, skeletal warriors wreathed in eerie green flames, to hold the line. But even they weren't strong enough. The elite beasts tore through the skeletons easily, and Ryuk watched their health bars drop rapidly. With frustration, he realized that even his undead couldn't stop the monsters. He had no choice but to retreat. Fortunately, the powerful creatures were slow, giving him enough time to escape. He knew his low HP and defense couldn't be fixed in the short term. That left him only one viable strategy: rely on Zhao's support skills. But for that to work, Zhao needed to grow stronger. Turning to his friend, Ryuk laid out a new plan. They would go back and hunt regular monsters first. Gaining experience and leveling up was the only way to stand a chance against the obsidian beasts. They moved into a zone populated by weaker monsters, where Ryuk pointed out a group of enemies he'd noticed earlier, saying they'd be ideal for helping Zhao gain experience. In group battles, the shield-bearer serves as the primary defense. Other roles rely on the shield-bearer to absorb damage, allowing them to attack safely from a distance. Taking Ryuk's earlier advice about aiming for an S-rank build, Zhao had been allocating all his recent stat points into defense. With this specialized build, along with the armor they had taken from the Ding family guards, the results were beginning to show. Zhao had now developed the core traits of a true shield-bearer, capable of withstanding attacks from level 20 monsters while taking minimal damage. Under Ryuk's guidance, Zhao dedicated himself to mastering his new role. From a short distance away, Ryuk called out pointers, teaching him how to adopt a proper defensive stance, how to shift his balance, stabilize his posture, and angle his shield to absorb impact effectively. Applying what he learned, Zhao successfully blocked a heavy blow from a crystal monster. He was encouraged to see immediate progress. His shield's durability was decreasing at a much slower rate than before. But his inexperience still showed. As Ryuk called out a warning to watch for follow-up attacks, the monster struck again, catching Zhao off guard and knocking him to the ground. Before it could land a finishing blow, Ryuk stepped in, blocking the hit and saving his friend. He used the moment as another teaching opportunity, emphasizing the importance of predicting an enemy's next move. Ryuk advised him to avoid wide, sweeping shield motions that left him open, and instead rely on smaller, controlled movements that allowed for quicker counterattacks. With a firm pat on Zhao's shoulder, Ryuk reminded him to stay alert but keep his body loose, tensing only at the moment of impact to conserve energy and react faster. Their training pressed on without pause. With one last encouraging pat, Ryuk told Zhao to stay focused and keep going. He remained behind his friend, offering constant support and teaching another core principle of shield-bearing, always watching the backs of your teammates. Upon hearing this, a quiet determination flickered across Zhao's face. Putting their training into action, they fought side by side, pushing through the dungeon's monsters. Ryuk reminded Zhao of one essential rule of combat: when stats are close, it's skill that decides the victor. Their teamwork paid off. After defeating another monster, Ryuk reached level 22. He was pleased with their progress. Now that Zhao could hold his own in battle, they could fight more effectively, allowing Ryuk to level up faster too. However, the biggest growth was for Zhao, who enthusiastically announced that he had finally reached the crucial level of 15. This was a major milestone. He could now learn a powerful new ability from one of the rare books they had taken. He pulled out a glowing skill book for shield armor, a rare technique that added an extra layer of armor to his shield. This gave it immense durability and boosted defense based on his own stats, making him an even more reliable tank. Now eligible, Zhao learned the shield armor skill, the last one he could use from the Ding family's stolen collection. As the ability activated, a glowing green layer coated his summoned shield, greatly increasing its defensive capabilities. Ryuk noted that the added boost would be especially useful when they encountered the obsidian beasts again. Elsewhere in the Crystal Pillar Canyon, 3 members of the school's teaching staff were observing the same group of elite obsidian beasts that Ryuk and Zhao had previously discovered. The teachers were puzzled by the unusually large number of elite-level Wanderer-type monsters gathered in one area. They concluded that the monsters were too dangerous for students to encounter and needed to be eliminated. However, they were well aware of the challenge ahead. While confident in handling regular level 30 enemies, these elite Wanderer types were an entirely different threat, stronger and far less predictable. Their conversation was interrupted when a student distress signal lit up the sky. Prioritizing safety, the teachers decided to put their current mission on hold and rush to the students' aid. But even as they prepared to leave, their concern about the Wanderer group remained. They understood the grave danger the creatures posed and knew that any students who wandered into that area unaware would be in serious trouble. As the teaching team got ready to leave for the rescue, one of them, Pang Jiang, suggested he stay behind just in case. Team leader Lei was about to approve when Ryuk and Zhao unexpectedly appeared. Ryuk stepped forward and shared his concern, offering to keep an eye on the group of elite monsters in their place. He explained that if the rescue team encountered another strong monster group, 2 teachers might not be enough. Calmly presenting his plan, Ryuk pointed out that the Wanderers weren't fast and, more importantly, hadn't noticed their presence. He assured them that as long as he and Zhao maintained a safe distance and did nothing to provoke the beasts, they would be fine. He urged the teachers to focus on the students, promising to act with caution. After a moment's hesitation, the teachers agreed to the plan. Before departing, however, Lei gave Ryuk a stern warning. He stressed that the creatures were incredibly dangerous and made it clear that Ryuk and Zhao were not to engage them under any circumstances. He reminded them again to stay hidden, because if the monsters noticed them, escape would be impossible. But Ryuk had no intention of hiding. The moment they were gone, he launched his own attack on the group of obsidian beasts, boldly declaring that it was they who wouldn't escape him. He swiftly put his plan into motion. His undead army appeared first, forming a front line and absorbing the initial onslaught from the powerful monsters. But this time, the skeletons weren't on their own. Zhao, now a dependable tank, activated both his surround shield and the recently acquired shield armor skill, forming a nearly impenetrable wall of defense. The energy beams that once posed a deadly threat now slammed harmlessly into Zhao's fortified shield, leaving the skeletons behind him untouched. With the monsters focused on his reinforced vanguard, Ryuk moved in through the chaos and launched his own devastating assault. His fists shattered the crystalline bodies of the elite monsters with frightening force. He concentrated on one particularly radiant beast, watching its health drop rapidly. With a final, precise strike, he broke the creature's core. The monster collapsed, and a bright pillar of light rose from its remains, a sign that valuable loot had dropped. Ryuk stood over the fallen creature, satisfied. He was finally adapting to the rhythm of battle with his new support class, combining Zhao's defense with his undead units and his own melee prowess. Still, he couldn't ignore the limits of his current strength. Although his reversed skills boosted his damage output, the naturally low base attack of a support class remained a handicap. He silently wished for a way to raise his raw offensive power. His mood shifted when he checked the loot. A message popped up confirming the item drop, and what he saw next made his eyes widen. Among the rewards was a long, glowing pink crystal sword, pulsing with energy and granting a staggering plus 552 bonus to attack. A slow smile crept across his face. It was the perfect solution to his problem. The weapon shimmered as he equipped it, transforming in his grip into a larger, more menacing blade crackling with dark violet energy. With this, he knew his battles would get much easier. Not everything had gone perfectly, though. He glanced at the skill book that also dropped and felt a stab of disappointment. It wasn't the gravitational pull skill he'd been hopping for. He figured the drop rate for that one must be pretty low. Just as Ryuk was turning over his next move, a sudden burst of red light exploded in the sky, an urgent flare. But this wasn't a typical student distress signal. Ryuk immediately recognized it as the special kind used only by teacher teams. That meant something had gone very wrong. Far across the canyon, the teachers who had gone to investigate the student distress call had walked into a trap. They'd stumbled upon a large group of elite wanderer monsters clustered around a cave entrance. The sheer number of powerful enemies made no sense, and the teachers were still trying to understand what was going on when Ryuk, Zhao, Yun, and Yin arrived. Just as confused, the new arrivals listened as one of the teachers explained the situation. The flare signal came from inside the cave, and the students they'd meant to rescue were likely trapped within. Another teacher quickly added that, despite their best efforts, the enemy numbers were overwhelming. Even with all the faculty present, they didn't have enough strength to force a path through. Spotting Yun and Yin, one of the teachers asked for their help. Without a moment's hesitation, Yun agreed, saying it was their duty to protect their fellow students. Taking command, she summoned a glowing, star-shaped magical emblem and cast Starlight Mystic Art, a wide area buff that enveloped the group in golden light. Their spirits lifted as their attack power surged. The sheer strength of the buff stunned everyone present. It was clearly an epic-tier ability. Wasting no time, Yun unleashed another spell, Gravitational Pressure, crushing a wide zone of wanderer beasts under a dense, invisible force. At the same moment, Yin joined the battle, firing off her own deadly skill, Hidden Thorn, which instantly obliterated a radiant crystal spike monster, proving her own frightening strength. Their combined assault devastated the once unstoppable monster horde. The students and teachers watched in awe as the battlefield tilted in their favor. One student whispered that, with warriors like Yun and Yin on their side, they finally stood a chance of rescuing the trapped students. He marveled at their strength, clearly impressed. Ryuk, watching from the back, was too. He noted their top-tier gear, powerful skills, and refined coordination. With them leading the charge, the rescue operation was all but guaranteed to succeed, whether he participated or not. With the immediate danger under control, Ryuk's attention drifted to a larger question. Why were so many elite wanderer monsters gathered at this one location? As the group prepared to enter the cave, he decided to investigate the mystery himself. He told Zhao to stay with the others, then activated Mirror Walk, shifting out of reality and into the eerie mirror dimension. The mirrored version of the dungeon shimmered with the same crystalline structures, offering plenty of reflective surfaces to maintain the illusion. But Ryuk was aware of the risks. The last time he used this ability during his raid on the Ding family, the timer had run out, and he couldn't get back in. He still didn't fully control when or how he could exit the dimension. Drifting silently through the ghost-like terrain, Ryuk noticed something odd. While the adventurers all had phantom-like reflections, the monsters didn't. Stranger still, the bodies of the monsters he had already slain did exist in the mirror world as solid objects. This revelation gave him a key insight. While the living had no physical form here, their dead bodies remained and could be interacted with. Gliding past the mirrored phantoms of the rescue team, Ryuk entered the cave. He quickly recognized the figures, senior students, including one he remembered as Little Z. It made sense now. They were the ones who had drawn the massive group of monsters and had fired off the emergency flare when overwhelmed. From what he could see, they were using the cave's tight passages to hold off the enemies, a temporary but effective tactic. Still, the biggest mystery remained. What was inside the cave that drew so many powerful monsters here in the first place? Determined to find out, Ryuk moved deeper into the crystal labyrinth. The endless reflections made navigation confusing. Every turn looked the same, and even his sense of direction started to falter. Then he froze. Eyes wide, breath caught in his throat, he stared at what lay ahead. Deep within the mirror world's cave, Ryuk had discovered something impossible, something far too valuable to be hidden in a place like this. A massive glowing green crystal vein. The dungeon's true treasure. Now he finally understood why Little Z and his team had taken such a risk to come here. Dungeons often contained rare resources that didn't exist in the real world, materials that could be used to craft powerful and unique equipment. The green ores he saw were one of those resources, worth far more than gold. As he examined a glowing green crystal, a system message appeared. Identifying it as mirror image crystal, or the message confirmed that he could loot the crystal and take it out of the mirror world. More importantly, it offered an option: return to the real world from here. This discovery changed everything. To test the message's consistency, he touched a regular blue crystal nearby and received the same prompt. A slow, knowing smile formed on his face as the truth became clear. With his ability, any mirrored surface could be used as an exit point back to the real world. It meant he had complete freedom of movement between worlds, as long as reflections existed. Wandering deeper through the glowing green crystal field, Ryuk picked up a shard of the valuable ore. He thought about his newly upgraded skill, aware that its full potential was still unknown. He needed time to study it properly. But for now, the enormous crystal vein before him demanded his attention. The deeper he went, the more he was stunned by the sheer volume of treasure. The ore deposit was massive, enough to make any ordinary person unimaginably wealthy. This finally solved the mystery that had been bothering him. Now it made sense why so many powerful Wanderer-type monsters had gathered near the cave entrance. They were drawn to, and perhaps guarding, this incredibly precious resource. Meanwhile, in the real world, the rescue was in full swing. Yun continued using devastating spells like gravitational pressure to crush the Wanderer monsters. Yin followed up with her deadly dual-blade dance, cutting through the remaining enemies with precision. Not content with just assisting, Yun unleashed her own offensive might with Star Rain Art, a wide-range spell that devastated the enemy lines. The teachers and students watching from afar were completely stunned. They wondered if all of Yun's skills were epic tier, as her power far surpassed that of their instructors. With a final, massive, cross-shaped slash, the last of the Wanderer beasts near the cave entrance was eliminated. The path was finally clear for the rescue team to retrieve the trapped senior students, who were now huddled together, exhausted but alive. As they were let out, Little Z let out a breath of relief, saying he thought they were finished in that cave. But Yin wasn't ready to celebrate. She immediately warned everyone not to lower their guard, reminding them that they still had to make it out of the dungeon, and everyone was already fatigued from the fight. Yun nodded but gave a confident smile, saying that with their help, escaping should be far easier than what they'd already overcome. Just as the rescue team began guiding the students out, Yun's expression changed. Her eyes widened, a look of alarm spreading across her face. She sensed something was wrong. Her fears were confirmed a moment later when terrified screams erupted behind her. The cause of the panic was horrifying. The path that had just been cleared was now swarmed again, this time with an overwhelming number of elite Wanderer-type monsters. It was as if every single Wanderer in the entire dungeon had converged at this exact point, completely cutting off their route to safety. While chaos returned in the real world, Ryuk continued his solo exploration in the mirror world. He moved through the maze-like crystal tunnels, the way ahead dimly lit by the strange green glow from the mineral veins. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks. His eyes widened in disbelief. He had discovered a breathtaking sight, a massive, tree-like crystal formation that reached to the top of the cave. At its peak was a star-shaped crystal poolsing with immense energy. There was no mistaking it. This was the dungeon's legendary secret treasure. Drawing closer, he remembered tales of such treasures. While the ores scattered around were already rare dungeon products, this core represented the ultimate prize, the condensed essence of all those resources. These treasures took untold ages to form, and most adventurers would go their entire lives without seeing one. Every secret treasure had a unique and powerful effect. As Ryuk reached for the glowing core, a system message appeared, identifying it as the Mirror Image Crystal Core. It was a unique grade secret treasure that, when used, would permanently boost stamina by plus 110, increase mana recovery speed by 0.5 per second, and reduce damage taken from light and electric-type attacks by 20%. The message also clarified something else. It was a replica of the true secret treasure. Still, Ryuk was ecstatic. The stamina increase would significantly boost his health pool, and faster mana recovery meant he could use his Trick Blade ability more frequently. But what excited him the most was the 20% damage reduction against light and electric attacks. That kind of percentage-based damage resistance was rare, even among top-tier gear. And since it was a consumable treasure, it wouldn't even occupy one of his precious equipment slots. As he admired the item, a sudden thought struck him. If the ore had attracted the Wanderers, then surely a treasure this valuable had to be guarded by something far stronger. It was only logical. Not wanting to risk an encounter, he quickly prepared to use the item and leave. A system window offered him two options: loot for later or use now. As he chose the latter, a surprising message appeared. Consuming or collecting this item will cost 10 minutes of your remaining mirror walk time. The condition caught him off guard. Back in the real world, just as a sense of relief began to settle over the rescue group, the ground trembled. A low, powerful rumble echoed through the cave. Everyone froze, students, teachers, even Yun and Yin. From behind a wall of giant crystals emerged an enormous figure. Towering over everything and radiating dark purple energy, the creature made even the largest wanderer beast seem small. A terrible realization dawned on the entire group. They had attracted the Lord of the Wanderers, a powerful hidden boss of the dungeon. Ryuk knew that the Wandering Lord existed independently of the Dungeon Lord and was a rare hidden boss. Its strength was far above that of any ordinary lord and far beyond what teachers or students could fight against. But the girl immediately got ready to fight, as a tank was protecting her. Ryuk thought that the Wandering Lord only appeared in high-level dungeons, but everyone was afraid because there was no way it could appear in a dungeon like this when they were fighting high-level monsters. At this rate, Ryuk knew that they were all going to be lifeless in a few seconds, but Yoon immediately told everyone to calm down. The most important thing, she thought, was that they worked together to escape. She pointed in one direction, and everyone started looking there. She told everyone that they could escape this basin through the canyon over there, and as long as they got out, they could get away easily. The girl started using her Starlight Mystic art and healed everyone, telling them to not hold anything back and push forward with full power. Even one of the teachers got ready with his light refracting shield, thinking that he would at least have to get the students out. The teacher decided that, starting with him, they would take turns leading the charge. But as the students and teachers started slashing away at the monsters, they slowly started getting damaged. And as the tankers were taking damage, the healers were healing them without any further delay. This was really getting above and beyond, but the monsters were not ready to give up, coming one after another and forming a circular trap for the students. The team was not giving up, trying to get out of the basin, and as only a few monsters were left, they thought that it was not far now and they could easily get away. But just then, the Wandering Lord started screaming and used a skill named Battle Cry Rally. All the monsters started emerging near the basin, and even the Wandering Lord blocked the whole area where the students had hoped to escape. No one realized that so many monsters had come in, and they wondered what was going on. The boss was not stopping, immediately using Crystal Aura, which increased all the other monsters' health, attack power, and defense by 20%. As they got even more powerful, they immediately broke through the shield made by the tankers and started damaging them with multiple energy attacks. The humans were shocked, wondering how the monsters' attack power suddenly increased so much. The damage was too high, and one of the teachers knew that he couldn't heal fast enough. Just then, multiple monsters attacked him with numerous energy beams, and as he screamed for help, he was obliterated, left lifeless on the ground. One of the students started screaming, announcing to everyone that a teacher was dead. Meanwhile, the lady still thought that everything was under control, ordering the shield guards to get to the front and the priests to prioritize healing the shield bearers. but she knew that everyone was too exhausted. Before, they were just barely holding on, and the Wandering Lord hadn't even really made its move yet, which was actually the main threat. Everyone realized that it was no use, but they had to do something. One of the assassins got ready because he knew that at this rate, they couldn't break through at all. The assassin used his hidden ability and thought that it was every man for himself now. So he tried getting out of the basin while being invisible, and even the students tried to follow him. But some teachers stopped the assassin class students, telling them not to go with the foolish teacher because the duration of stealth wasn't that long, and he would not escape no matter what. The monsters were wandering around, looking for where the human disappeared. The knights kept on looking, wondering what was happening next, and the golem suddenly stopped as the Wandering Lord started using another skill, this time an attack skill. At last, everyone knew they had to watch out, but it was too late. The damage was lethal, even breaking the ground into multiple pieces. The invisible human was not invisible to the boss and was blasted into smithereens by the monster's energy attack. Now the whole basin was covered with golems and monsters, and the students were trapped in between. The tankers were still trying to defend themselves, but they slowly and surely knew it wasn't going to help. To make things worse, even the canyon was broken and coming down. The people knew the attack power was just too absurd and that they couldn't escape no matter what. To their surprise, the Wandering Lord was not done. It started charging another one of those energy beams. One of the teachers immediately knew that it was over because this time the beam was coming for them for sure, and they couldn't block it no matter what. But to their surprise, both of the girls jumped out of the shield and used their skills named Giant's Shield and Rock Mountain Shield of level 70 for their defense. These shields had a defense of 3,000 and core resistance of 80, and the Rock Mountain Shield was made from the shell of a Rock Mountain turtle, which adapts to the wielder's size upon equipping. Both shields were somehow able to hold the hyperbeam thrown by the Wandering Lord, and the girls immediately called out to those with high strength to come and hold the shield so that it didn't collapse. The shield was level 70 equipment, so its durability was guaranteed. But because its level was so high, no one's level was actually high enough to properly equip it, and it was also difficult to move. The girl knew that the shield could only buy them a little time. Some of the teachers now started wondering, now that their minds were clearer, why the school's dungeon was housing this kind of monster. They started accusing each other, saying it was all the teachers' fault, otherwise they would never have come. Meanwhile, the teachers were getting demoralized because the students were blaming them for everything happening, even though they were trying to protect them. But one man thought that at least those two kids should not have come and run into danger. But as he turned around, he saw that Zhao was already there, even though they had been told to stay by the valley. No one even noticed him until now. The boy started using his skills, while the man wondered how he got there. But Zhao screamed at the man to watch out. It was really a dangerous situation. As he turned around, he saw that a rocky golem was almost about to hit him, but Zhao came to the rescue and immediately used his surround shield to protect him. Even when the perimeter defense was breached first, somehow the man survived, though he coughed up a lot of blood. Even Zhao knew there was no one left who could stop the wandering species now, and the golems were overpowering. But somehow, he was defending himself and the others with his high-level shield skills. The man could not believe that Zhao had this kind of strength in him to begin with. But the shield guards' shields were all broken now, and the monsters were overpowering them. Even Zhao knew that their entire defense was gone, and the Wandering Lord was now going to decimate every human he found, and the first one was going to be Zhao himself. The man knew it was hopeless, and that nothing was going to work. But slowly and surely the monster started grumbling, and something appeared in front of the man like a shining star. It was none other than our boy Ryuk, who was using his sword to slash the monster into pieces. As Ryuk landed on the ground, he complimented Zhao for doing all he could. The boy was elated as he smiled at his friend, and Ryuk just told him to leave the rest to him and not worry at all.